let's bring Barry Eyre on the show. Barry, welcome.
Good morning.
So I understand that you are the VP of Business Development for KTP Advisors, and especially focused on their private exchange consulting practice. So we're going to, want to get your views on what employers and employer groups should be asking about private exchange marketplace. It's such a confusing space right now, and changes happen all the time. It's why we were really glad to, find KTP Advisors and as one of the emerging sort of objective voices in this cluttered space. Tell us, first of all, though, a little bit about KTP. What is the business overall? I understand it's more than just the private exchange consulting practice. So maybe you could share with us an overview of the firm and how your practice fits.
Sure. So, we also have a retiree healthcare consulting business, and that's really a core part of what we do. We work with corporations, municipalities, a lot of Taft-Hartley groups, so union groups. And so that kind of dovetails into private exchange consulting as well, because obviously our clients on the retiree healthcare side are considering private exchanges. And we also have a pharmacy benefits consulting business as well. That ties in also heavily with the retiree healthcare space because of the drug consumption patterns of retirees. But specifically related to the private healthcare marketplace, you've mentioned how complicated and confusing it is. What we've been doing over the last year or more is developing a comprehensive database of the marketplace. And we use that to leverage, and we leverage that to help our clients navigate this, rapidly expanding landscape. I think you probably realize that there are 200 plus private exchanges currently operating. And, what we've done is we kind of divided them up into sub-markets because there are some pretty distinct differences between the players that are out there right now. You have the pure play technology companies, which can allow you to build your own exchange. There are insurance platforms that already have, exchange platforms that already have insurance carriers on them. There are oftentimes single carrier exchanges, and definitely one of the more well-known spaces are the large human resources consulting firms that have developed their own private exchanges. And finally, we're seeing more and more, and this is what's driving this high number of exchanges out there, is a proliferation of brokers that are developing their own exchanges or white labeling some of the other offerings that are already out there. And from the outside looking in, from a company's perspective, it's a rapidly developing, as you mentioned, confusing landscape. And so, our value proposition around private exchange consulting is, you mentioned initially there, we're completely independent. We don't have our own exchange. And so what that allows us to do is to give unbiased advice to our clients to help them navigate this, rapidly developing marketplace.
Hey, Barry, one thing I want to just add to that is in looking at the KTP Advisors .com website, there's a really nice private health insurance exchange market map, PHIX market map.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely. Sorry, that's something that we're very proud of, and kind of like you're looking when I talk about like what we've been doing over the last year and a half or so, and kind of developing this comprehensive look at the marketplace and subdividing it. That is sort of like the top level of that work. So we're presenting out to the marketplace kind of a roadmap for employers to kind of get a sense of who's out there, and there's a level of detail for these various different providers. But we have a lot of other metrics that we use to help evaluate them once somebody comes on as a client. But yes, there's a lot of really good information there on our website about the private exchange marketplace.
So tell us, the main questions you're getting from your private exchange clients. What are you hearing, or what are the areas of concern?
Well, one of the interesting things that I hear a lot of, it's a couple of interrelated questions, and they kind of really relate to how the private exchanges and the public exchanges interrelate. People are asking, how can I take advantage of the Affordable Care Act to help reduce my costs? And does a private exchange allow me to have connectivity with the state and federal Affordable Care Act exchanges? It's an interesting question because the Affordable Care Act exchanges, the subsidies for individual employees kind of decrease as the level of compensation of an employee goes up. So once you hit 4 times the poverty level, there are no subsidies available to employees on exchange. Also, so depending upon the compensation practices of the company, there may be no subsidies available to any of their employees. Additionally, employers are actually penalized by sending their employees over to the exchange. There's actually penalties. So we don't really see that. There's a lot of discussion around that issue, but we don't really see that as a viable strategy for employers to take advantage of in reducing costs for their active employees. But one of the interesting areas, though, where there may be some strategies that can kind of dovetail with the private exchange, public exchange interface is on the early retiree market. So these are retirees that are quite expensive for employers because they're not yet on Medicare. And there are some rules within the Affordable Care Act that if you are separating out your retirees from your active employees, and there are some specific hurdles that you have to kind of cross in order to prove that it's a separate plan, you're exempted from some of the, from the penalties, for example, that would apply to active employees. And so depending upon the level of after-tax cost, after a subsidy cost that somebody's going to see on the exchange, relative to what an employer is currently providing, in terms of their offsets that they're providing to their retirees, they may actually be better off on a public exchange. And from a technical perspective, many exchanges do provide this functionality where a retiree can go on to the employer-sponsored exchange and have the calculations done to kind of assess where their subsidy would fall, and then provide a conduit over to the public exchange if that was a viable strategy for that employee. So that's one. There's a lot of questions going on around that particular issue. One of the other things is what people aren't really asking. We don't really get lots of questions on the security issues related to exchanges, and obviously, this is a very important thing when you think about like all the data breaches that we see all the time. Things are constantly happening here. So something that should be really top of mind when making a consideration of an exchange is how robust are the security arrangements? Does the exchange actually have its own technology infrastructure, or are they outsourcing that to a third party to handle security issues? That's another thing that's something, if you want to think of things that somebody should be really focused on, that's a very important point.
And the liability around that, I presume, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously the insurance arrangements at the exchange for, errors and omissions and things along those lines. There's a very, it's an important point that kind of sometimes gets overlooked.
What else?
Well,
what other questions would you recommend our listeners really consider that they may otherwise have missed?
Sure. People are very aware of their exchanges. When we talk to people, their first questions are, what are my exchange options? Which are the exchanges that are serving my industry? And I think, those are kind of good questions, but I think really the first step should be, an introspective look at what is the benefits philosophy of the employer and what do they hope to accomplish by moving on to an exchange. Because, there are lots of different, potential strategies they could be looking for. Are they primarily focused on reducing costs or addressing health trend issues? Or are they maybe looking to alleviate the burden of administration or enrollment? Effectively, they're trying to outsource the human resources department. Are they looking to increase employee choice because this is some kind of employee retention strategy? Or are they maybe trying to transition over to, and this is one of the big benefits potentially, the cost-saving benefits of an exchange is, the advent of healthcare consumerism and really putting power into the employee's hands to make choices and better manage their health care. But, not every company has really kind of developed this clear philosophy or knows the strategy of what they want to accomplish around these particular points. And the better a company understands its priorities and goals, the more effective, we, KTP, can be in guiding them through all the choices that are out in the marketplace. Because, a lot of some exchanges might be really good at helping to reduce the cost, but they're not as great in terms of like the shopping experience, things along those lines. So, really understanding what it is that you hope to achieve rather than just like kind of running out there is very important. And I think a lot of upfront work done can help to save time in terms of evaluation of the opportunities that are the various different exchanges which could possibly serve your company's needs.
Right. Now that's really sound advice, and kind of almost classic. People like to rush to tactics before strategy, and so benefit strategy first in evaluating private exchanges. And it reminds me of I think it was Sun Tzu said, tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So
a wise man. Yes.
Anyway, and Sun Tzu was too. But thank you. No, what is the talk to us a little bit about the timeline? How long it takes? What should employers expect from a timing perspective in terms of selecting a private exchange that works for them?
Well, it's interesting because that question really dovetails well into the last point that we were talking about. If a company is really comfortable in their philosophy and completely understands what their goals are, what they hope to achieve, that will greatly speed the process of narrowing the choices, because again, there's so many different vendors out there. So if you have a very clear understanding of what it is that you hope to achieve, it kind of helps to narrow the decision set of potential vendors. That helps in time to market, time to implementation. Obviously there are lots of variables at an individual company's level. I mean, number of plans. Do they have collectively bargained groups? Are they looking to just do actives, just retirees, possibly both? So it's hard to give a benchmark, but what I would say is that if a company has already done the work and really understands what they're trying to accomplish, and they are not overly complicated, and again, somewhat vague in terms of like their product offerings, for instance, you could get something done by the 1/1/16 beginning of the plan year then. But obviously all this stuff needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis because, we see some groups, particularly in the municipal market, 17 different collectively bargained groups, and they all have different, cost-sharing arrangements. I mean, it can be very complicated. So you really have to scale your expectations based on how, complicated your individual company's, position is. But certainly, you could see a 4 to 6 month implementation and go live time frame.
Gotcha. Well, we only have a couple minutes left in this segment, Barry. So it'd be great if you could maybe share some top takeaways, maybe 2 or 3 key points our listeners should take away from this.
Well, I think one of the things that we've kind of mentioned a couple of times, and I will just emphasize it again, I think before you kind of go down the path of looking at your options out in the marketplace, it's critically important that you understand your philosophy and what you're trying to accomplish. Because, you could spend a lot of time evaluating various different vendors to realize there's no way they're going to be able to match what your strategic goals are. Specifically going back to, KTP, again, we are, by definition, we are objective and unbiased. We are developing a very robust decision-making process here. We're putting some of that information out to the marketplace on our website, and we use that to help companies choose the best outcome for them. I mean, we don't have a dog in the hunt here about which particular vendor they end up with. We want to make sure that it is absolutely the right one. But, one of the things that I truly believe is that this evolving marketplace by putting power in the hands of the employees and making them partners in the process of choosing their health care, and then when they actually get transparency around cost, they start to make decisions that benefit not only them, but also companies. And I think that that is one of the critical takeaways here. So many times, employees have no idea of the cost of the benefits that they're receiving. And so one of the key things that you can do through a private exchange is really transmit that information to an employee in a shopping environment and allow them to see how much is being contributed, and then to really truly appreciate the benefits that they're receiving from their company.
Great. Well, Barry, thank you so much for joining us, and it was very, very helpful and informative, and I'd say, too, we're very appreciative that your organization, you and your colleagues have also contributed blog content in the IHC's private exchange community online. So we appreciate that very much.
Well, yeah, thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity, too.
Our listeners can find out more about you and your organization at ktpadvisors.com. So thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.